we're here in Oregon, but if you were in Holland right now, in Holland, or maybe certainly in Holland, you might have someone come in and say, Allah is God and He alone. And the only way to God is through Islam. What are you going to say? This is a statement about what is true, right? And you're not going to be given the chance to accept it or not. You're going to be forced to accept this as true. So that gets us to the importance of knowing the true God before anything else. To get free, to become free, the first thing to do is to know who is really God, who is the true God. Because there's all kinds of gods out there on the market, you know. So the first thing to do is to know who the true God is. And that's what the first 3 commandments are about. I just make note of the fact that that's why we go to Mass every Sunday, is to get this straight in our head, among other things, that this really is the truth. And the more we come into the truth, the more it comes into us. The other commandments, let's think of the other commandments for a second. Honor your father and your mother. Well, if you get up, when you get to be 15, 16 years old, if you just completely disregard what your parents say and yell at them and scream at them and tell them that they're worthless and they're stupid and they don't know what's going on, does that make for happiness? Who's happy when you're fighting with your parents all the time? Or let's put it another way. I'll tell you what. Here's an example. I knew a guy when I was in Salem, when I was first a priest. This woman died. I think she was 42 years old. She wasn't that old. She had been an alcoholic for a long time. She had a terrible drinking problem. And her son, who was about 20, I think, at the time, he came and saw her, and he just told her what a worthless mother she was, and how she had wrecked his life, and he just really unloaded, with her, just completely trashed her. And then he took off traveling, and he went across, and he was in the back east somewhere, and about a year or two later, suddenly she died. And he comes back, and he never got to say anything more. That was the last thing he said to his mother, was how worthless she was. Well, by the time he got back, I can tell you he felt a good deal different. He didn't see things that way. But that's the last chance he had to speak to his mother. Did that make him happy to treat her that way? So God tells us in advance, you see, don't do this because you'll be miserable. Don't do that. Honor your father and your mother. Because, see, this isn't just for now, like when we're just this year, next year, but like 10 or 15, 20 years down the road, so that you can come home, and so that your parents can come to you. If you become enemies of your parents, you're going to be like, you're not going to see them. They're not going to see you. And are you going to be happy that way? So you think about that. If you think about honor your father and your mother, think about what that has to do with your happiness and your freedom. Your freedom. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not kill. That doesn't just mean out-and-out killing, although it certainly means that, but it means killing somebody's reputation. Let's say to destroy another person because I don't like that person. And all I want to do is I want to make sure nobody else thinks well of that person. I'd like that person to just be out of here. So I'm going to lie, I'm going to cheat, anything to make that person suffer. This doesn't really make for happiness either, does it? I remember when I was in the 5th grade, for some reason or other, this friend of mine, all of a sudden he just turned and he just would provoke me every day, try to pick a fight. I still to this day have never, it's one of the most unhappy experiences of my life because I couldn't understand where this came from and what to do about it. It made me miserable. And I don't think he was very happy about it either, probably, because after a while somehow things kind of got patched up. But you know what I mean? This business of that has to do with thou shalt not kill. Don't do that. It will not make you happy. God knows this, huh? Let's take just one other one. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not steal. Well, what if you steal stuff? When do thieves have to? What time of day do thieves have to operate usually? In the nighttime. Why? So nobody will see them, because they've got to keep it secret, huh? What they do, they've got to keep secret. Well, after a while, would you like to bear all those secrets you got to keep people from knowing? It kind of makes you a little bit nervous, to put it mildly. It's hard to see how you could be very happy as a thief. I'm thinking of a guy I knew in the jail again. He comes to mind. He was a bank robber, 60 years old, 62 years old. He'd been robbing banks for 20 years, he told me. And he had got caught. He'd been in a shootout with the police just a couple days before in Eugene. And there he was telling me about how he used to rob banks, you know. And this is where it brought him. When I went to court, he went to the federal. They threw the book at that man. He's probably dead now, but he died in prison, I'm sure. He died alone. He robbed his banks. He got good at robbing banks, but when it caught up with him, miserable. Thou shalt not steal. You're not going to be free. You're not going to be happy, huh? So that's the point. I just want to suggest that when you think of the law of God, it is the law of freedom. It's meant to take you along with the Hebrew people out of slavery into the promised land of freedom. Huh? It's ahead of you. God is always calling us to freedom. Freedom, by the way, remember that promised land? That's where Jesus lived, the promised land. He lived in the promised land. Okay? Now, the trouble with that word law, when we say the word law, is it kind of sounds, I think usually we think of law as something that limits our freedom, you know? Like if the speed laws, I just came back from Jacksonville, there's certain places that the law says you can only go 35 miles an hour. And I might say, well, I want to go 60 miles an hour. And I'm going to go 60 miles an hour. So what happens when I go 60 miles an hour in a 35 mile an hour zone? You know, the police are going to, the law is going to put a limit on my freedom there, right? I can't just do whatever I want. So we often think of that the law is there just to hem us in, right? Keep us in. So let's think about that a little bit differently, if that's always the case with the law. When you're, let's say I have a 2-year-old son, like me when I was biting those little boys. My dad probably told me the same thing. He said, now, that street out in front of the house is a real busy street. There's a lot of cars in there, a lot of cars in that street. Never go out in the street and play, he says to me. Never go out in the street to play, or there's going to be trouble. You're going to pay for it if you do. Never, never, never run out in the street. Now, why does he tell me that? Does he tell me that because he just wants to hem me in and you know, constrict me and limit me? Why does my dad tell me that? Say it again. To protect me, huh? Why does he need to protect me? Why would I get run over? Yeah, but why wouldn't I know what to do? I'm 2 years old. I'm not right. Isn't that it? At 2 years old, what do I know about a busy street? I don't know what, you know, in a word, I don't know how dangerous that street is, right? That street, if I go running out in that street, it might be the last thing I do, right? But I don't know that. And what I need is a law that protects me from what I don't know, okay? And that's why, and by the way, when my father gives me that law, is he doing that because he hates me? Why is he giving me that law? Because, huh? So I won't get hurt. So he's given me the law because he loves me. Think of it this way. What if my father said, didn't even pay any attention? What if he said, oh, you know, you're 2 years old, go ahead, do whatever you want. I got other things to do. I got to call my friend. What kind of father would that be? That would let a child run in the street?